Well done. Now, come on, now what have we got? You've got the Eyecatchers here, you've got 8, what are there, 7 on the all-weather, 1 over jumps?
Yeah, yeah, I concentrate. I tend to certainly find more Eyecatchers on the all-weather this time of year, but so yeah, no surprise that there's more on the poly track than there are over jumps. And a mixed bag, some more solid than others for sure, but yeah, there's a few interesting ones in there.
Let's start with the horse who sounds like a boxer, Prince Namit. Talk about this one.
Yeah, this would come into the category of one of the less solid ones because he's not one you would necessarily completely trust to back this up. He's a 10-year-old who's plummeted down the weights, and he's got more poor runs than good runs in recent
Where
years.
is he, Mil?
He's in the green colours towards the rear on the inside.
Got it.
But the reason I was interested in this was on his return from a break, and they went no gallop at all, and the horses like the Last King of Scotland, who's in front and he's going to stay there, were definitely an advantage. You can see he's still right at the back in the green colours on the inside, out of the shot now, and he had absolutely no chance of winning the race the way it's turned out, but I thought the way he stayed on from an unpromising position in the closing stage, he's eventually going to finish third, which looks very unlikely at this stage. Now he's declared, I think tomorrow he's declared at Kempton. I wouldn't get completely carried away with this run, as I say, because he's a horse who's long been one not to completely rely on to back up a run, but he's dropped to his lowest ever mark, and that was a promising run.
Looks very promising. When you said that horse is going to finish third, I thought, come on, we've got the wrong race here.
Well, they did go
Amazing.
a very steady gallop, and he wasn't. The ratings in that race, I think, are misleading because apart from the winner, most of them you could say wouldn't be able to run up to their rating. Yes. So I wouldn't pay too much. He was definitely the lowest rated. But all he's shown is that he's in good heart. Whether he'll back it up or not, I don't know.
Let's have a look at the second one here. James Unit trains this. Also ran at Wolverhampton the other day, called No Head. Tell us about this horse.
Yeah, I tipped this horse in this race, and he wasn't in any way unlucky. But I think he's just one to bear in mind for maybe a slightly lesser race. This was his first venture into Class 4 company, and this was a hot race.
So a competitive race, yeah.
And I think he's run well enough to suggest that in a slightly less competitive race, he's been recording a series of quite good times at Wolverhampton this winter, and he gets forced a bit wide, and he just takes a bit longer to pick up. He didn't travel quite as well as he usually does, and they might stick the cheek pieces back on that he had on his 2 previous starts, and it takes him a long time to get going, and the race kind of develops more towards the far side, which isn't always the case at Wolverhampton, but it did here, maybe because the prominent runners weren't coming back. And you'll see by the way he finishes off the race, he's definitely a bit better than the result. He's the only one who's really finishing from the back. And he's eligible, he was rated 70 going into that, and he's still rated 70, so he's eligible for 0 to 70 handicaps. And I think he's still handicapped to win in possibly slightly lesser grade. If he can go back into a Class 5 and probably win one of those.
Will he be out soon?
I've no idea. I'm not even sure if he's got any entries at the moment.
No,
but
no head.
He's been kept busy, but he's been very consistent.
Let's have a look at a horse called Princess Lexi. William Knight trains us, a very capable young trainer.
Yeah, this might be one of the more interesting ones, I thought. This was a decent race, and the winner trip switches in the form of his life. Yeah. There were 1 or 2 other solid performers. Landhawk, who's in the green cap, eventually finishes third. He got some decent course and distance form. You can see Princess Lexi in the blue cap, while the winner trip switch is making his run for home. Princess Lexi in the yellow colours with the blue cap, just having to wait for a run, still having to wait. The winner's flown already. She gets in the clear, and she's got no chance of winning from there, but I really like the way she stayed on. She had to be switched inside Landhawk as well, and I thought she did pretty well to snatch second. And she's a horse who, she's handicapped as if she's a lot better on turf than the all-weather, but this suggests that she's, I'm not saying as good, but she's certainly capable of winning off this mark. She's been well beaten by the winner, but she's comfortably beaten the rest, and I thought that was a very decent run.
3 down, 5 to go, and the next one on the list is Crowning Star. Stanmore horse, ran at Wolverhampton.
Yeah, I put this horse up as an eye-catcher after he ran in the Brocklesby, and I thought he was going to be a decent early season 2-year-old, and he just never really fulfilled that. And he's, to be honest, he's not been. I think he's been a bit disappointed, but I thought this was much more like it, because I thought this was a fair nurse. I was going to call it nursery, of course, the 3-year-olds now. I thought this was a fair 3-year-old handicap, and he probably wasn't advantaged by where he is on the home turn.
Who's on him then?
Who would be on him?
He's roasting him along, isn't he?
I can't remember. Maybe Liam Canary, I'm not sure. I can't remember who's riding him, but basically the winner, Adrainian, and the second Oratorian have both been in very good form, and he never really lands a blow at them, but I thought that the way he stayed on in the closing stages was enough to suggest that he's actually starting to find a bit of form now.
Does he need further, do you think, looking at that?
Well, he might. I mean, that was 7, and you'd think looking at it he might, but I just think that was a step forward from what he's been doing over the winter recently, and he's another one who's got an entry in the next couple of days, I think. But I'm not completely convinced that he's turned the corner, but that was definitely more encouraging because I think the front two were both okay.
Considering he was being rousted along, the jockey was trying to really get him going, wasn't he? I thought staying on nicely there, perhaps another furlong, but he did well to get so close.
Yeah, well, sometimes you look at a race and if the horse is the only one that comes from the back, it can make sense to think, well, it doesn't necessarily need further, he just was unsuited by the run of the race. You quite often get races on Polytrack where the pace isn't that strong. So that might be the case with him.
Let's have a look at another horse, Dancing Freddie. Now, Dancing Freddie's been around a bit, so why do we fancy this one?
His last 2 runs have been over 6 furlongs, and he's taken the field along or travelled strongly for a long way both times. And I think his best form, certainly on the all-weather, is over 5 furlongs and on fibre sand. And he was actually declared for the big 5 furlong handicap at Southall. Was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. He was declared for that big 5 furlong handicap where he would have been a long way out of the handicap. And although it was a valuable race, although it was a valuable race, he would have been a long way out of the handicap. But I thought the way he ran in this, in a race that was run at a reasonable gallop, he's taken them along for a long way. He's up with the Strig, who actually outlasts him, but the Strig's in good form and came more towards the centre as well, and will be more of a 6 furlong horse. He's still in front as we approach the furlong pole. I think back at 5 furlongs at Southall, where he's recorded a series of consistent performances in good times, I think we'll see him in a better light. And there's a race for him in March, and 0 to 85, which ought to suit him to a T.
In March?
So, yeah.
You got that sorted out?
Well, I mean, you've to try and get yourself in the shoes of the trainer, because there are limited opportunities for horses who run at Southall, especially the better ones, because there's some horses who are just too good to run at Southall. Dubai Hills being an obvious example from last year, fantastic 5% horse. He's just rated too highly to run there anymore. So he's not in that situation. He's only rated about 74 or something like that. But there's still a limit to the number of races that he's eligible to race in. So yeah, he's one who I think back at Southall will be of interest.
And it's very interesting to see it back at Southall, because that's the difference, 5%, a deeper surface, we think, compared to the faster Polytrack, and not every horse goes on it.
Yes, not every horse goes on it. I just view them as completely different surfaces. And, funnily enough, we've seen quite a few horses successfully transfer from Polytrack to fibre sand this winter, which may be something to do with the fact that it hasn't at hardly any stage has it ridden as deep as it was last winter. That may make it easier. I'm sure it does make it easier for horses lacking experience in fibre sand to transfer their form from Polytrack to fibre sand. I haven't got any statistics on that, so I'm just guessing slightly there, but I think even so, you still would look for a horse with fibre sand form over one that doesn't have it. Interesting.
Let's have a look at Milo Kilo. Who's this? Jane Chapel-Hyams, this, isn't it?
Yeah, and she's got a very good record with horses switched to her from other yards, and including from good yards, and this one comes from Richard Fyes, and you'd be hard pressed to improve one from that yard.
Great.
But he's returned as if he's on a fair mark, to be fair. He's come back to on a decent mark.
They have the white bridle as well.
The white bridle is always the clue for Jane Chapel-Hyams horses. And it's funny because I didn't think they looked to go that strong a pace in this race. I thought they looked to be cantering all the way around, and yet they've returned a very good time indeed. And they've finished in a heat, but the time still suggests that it was a decent race. And I like the way that he's not really in the best position to strike there, because he's on the inside and there's a few outside him who you would think might be able to outkick him. But I really like the way he's kicked for home and he's fended off all the other challengers. And although, as I say, they've finished fairly close together, I still think this was a warm handicap, and I think that was a good performance. And he's only gone up £2 because he's won it easily. So
just gone up 2.
I haven't looked ahead at the programme book for this one, because I'm sure there'll be several opportunities for him. But he's still rated under 100. There'll be a 0 to 100 handicap somewhere that he can run in the game. So
very interesting. Yeah, Milo Kilo, Jane Chapelain. She trains down the Bury Road at Newmarket and trains next door to where Mike de Kock's horses are board before they go to Dubai. And it's a lovely stable, and it opens up right onto the gallop straight away. But she does very, very well. Let's have a look at another horse, Apple Blossom Time. What about this one?
Yeah, I don't know much about her other than that I thought this was a very promising debut for a new trainer. And
who's it? Derek Hayden-Jones.
Yeah. And I have to say, I don't think this was much of a race. Looking into it, I made a selection in this race that bombed out, but looking at the race beforehand, I thought it was very weak and there weren't many informed horses.
Which one is it again?
In the yellow with a white cap on the inside with about 2 behind him.
Got it.
2 behind her, sorry. But again, the way the race has unfolded, she kind of stuck for room on the inside, which does happen sometimes at Wolverhampton. And then she's forced to make a challenge up the far rail, which can often, it's not impossible, but it can make life more difficult. And she takes a little bit of a time to thread her way through. Not surprisingly, she's modest. You'd expect that of a horse with her rating. But I thought the way she goes on in the final 100 yards suggests that if she had got a clearer run through, she's definitely finished with running in her. It's definitely promising. You have to bear in mind the weakness of the race, because I think it was very weak, but she's certainly better than the result there.
Now, those are the flat horses from the all-weather.
Yeah.
But now you've got a horse called Iconic Rose, who ran over hurdles at Leicester. Oh, was beaten quite away.
Yeah, I've set the poor guys who find the videos quite a task here. Because,
yes. Where is she?
She wasn't in the picture much. She's in the orange colours on the one from the left.
Second left, yeah.
You're right, she's beaten a long way.
Yeah, got it.
The reason I'm interested, a couple of things. Firstly, this was her 3rd start. She ought to be eligible for a handicap mark. We'll see next week whether she gets one or not. You'd have to look at the race all the way around, obviously, to keep pattern. It wasn't so much that it was a promising run in itself. It's just that it was her 3rd run. She's gone round the inside for most of the way. Yeah. She's finished with a little bit of running in her. You can see her. She's staying on steadily. She's not good enough to win a novice hurdle, but she's bred very much to want 3 miles. That was 2 miles 5. Her dam won over 3 miles. Her sire, Sir Harry Lewis, is an influence for stamina. Yeah. She's had 3 runs, been beaten a long way. If she does get a mark, it's going to be quite a low one, and there might be a fair bit more to come up to 3 miles.
Pam Sly, good trainer. So just a line on each. I know people want to write these down. Just a little line on each. Prince Nemeth.
Yeah, he came from a long way back in a race not run to suit, steadily run race. Whether he'd back it up, you'd be questionable, but it was eye-catching.
And is it possible tomorrow?
He's running. I haven't looked at the race. He's running at Kempton, I think, tomorrow, but I haven't looked at the race, so I couldn't tell you what I think of his prospects at the moment. No head. Series of consistent runs, good times every time at Wolverhampton, and stepped up in grade, but finished with running in him, so he's still in form.
Princess Lexi?
Princess Lexi,
what did you say about her?
Very nice run from her behind one that's in the form of his life and didn't get the clearest of runs. Shaped like her turn, he's very close, I thought.
Crowning star.
Yeah, he's one who didn't fulfil the promise as a 2-year-old, but has stepped up this time, I thought, and showed a fair bit more than he had been doing of late against a couple of informed horses, and might be able to sneak a little race.
Dancing Freddie?
Yeah, he's run as if he's shaped as if he retains his form and is in good form over 6 furlongs the last twice, but I think he wants to go back to 5 and probably Southwell.
And Milo Kilo?
Won a very competitive handicap on his first start for Jane Chapel-Hyam. Hasn't been hit by the handicapper and ought to continue to give a good account. And by the way, it could be Milo Kilo or Milo Killock, whichever one it is. Apple Blossom Time, lovely name. Yeah, didn't get anything like the run of the race at Wolverhampton. Very weak race, and that needs to be taken into account next time, but she did shape as though she had more to offer. And Iconic Rose? Not one to be interested in, particularly for novice hurdles, but for handicaps, stepped up in trip, went round the inside for quite a bit of the race and ran all right in the circumstances, bred to want further. Which of those, I know it's always difficult, and this is the question I always ask you, which of those 8 would you say, Tomo, that's the one I really fancy to be on next summer? Princess Lexi. But as always, it depends on the price. Agreed. Everybody will have spotted that, I suspect, but at this stage, she'd be the one who'd send out.
Lovely. Hugh, thank you very much. I've got all those down. And of course, you can log on to attheraces.com and just press the button and people will email you and tell you when the horses are running next.
That's right.
Great idea.
The tracker is a very good idea.
Brilliant.
It works very well, and you can restrict it to just the next time, which is a big advantage of it.
Well done. Great.